What's the holdup on Jets Aaron Rodgers? Is it just Brian Gutekunst thinking the two that's on the table from Joe Douglas might magically turn into a one if they just hold Braveheart style all the way to the end of the draft, even into Friday night, go through Thursday night with nothing happening? Is that really the way that Gutekunst is playing it, or there's another holdup that we're unaware of? What do you got?
There just hasn't really been a pressure point yet, Rich. The next one's going to be that week of the draft, because the moment you go beyond this draft, now if the Packers say we're not taking the best offer from the Jets, you're downgrading your pick by a year by pushing them out into 24 and 25 instead of 23 and 24. Mm-hmm. So the Jets, to a certain degree, have the leverage right up until the draft. If you get beyond the draft, now you're into a completely new phase of all this. So they're not totally on different pages right now. There were multiple discussions at the league meetings between Joe Douglas and Brian Gutekunst. I think that there's an acknowledgement on everybody's front, and I was in on that small media gathering with Gutekunst where we talked to him for about a half hour. I've obviously seen the quotes from Joe Douglas most recently saying he's going to be here. Woody Johnson cautiously optimistic about that scenario as well. Everybody wants the same thing. I think that's the part you can't lose here. This is not they're at odds, and it's not in this regard the Brett Favre saga from 2008 where Favre wanted to come back and play for the Packers, and the Packers in essence said it's too late. You know, as Mike McCarthy once said, the train had left the station. In this case, the Jets plainly want Aaron Rodgers to be a Jet. Aaron Rodgers has said publicly he wants to be a Jet, and the Packers, as Gutekunst explained it, pivoted right around the time of the darkness retreat in late February, early March, where they had made many efforts to get a hold of Aaron Rodgers to try to have conversations about him. And this is something, Rich, we talked about on game day morning all the way back on Super Bowl Sunday, which was if Aaron Rodgers wanted to be a Packer, the Packers wanted him to be back, subject to additional conversations about what that looks like. And that's related to the roster, that's related to game plan, that's related to all these other things to continue talking after they had productive conversations right after the season. Those conversations never took place, as Gutekunst explained it, because Aaron Rodgers did not engage. And Gutekunst said, well, that's not necessarily one person's fault, but it's a fairly plain message, which is that we wanted to talk to Aaron. We wanted to sit down with him and figure out if there's a path forward. Once Aaron tacitly made his intentions clear, we had to move on. So at this point, the Packers also want to get the best deal possible for Aaron Rodgers and move forward with Jordan Love. I tend to believe, just because there's a vested interest for everybody in this being resolved to the same end, which is Aaron Rodgers being a Jet and the Packers, rallying around Jordan Love, that this gets done right around the time of the draft. There's a lot of reasons for it to get done. But at the same time, at this point, the Packers have had a principled stance on what they think this trade should look like. The Jets have also stood relatively firm in terms of what they think this should look like. And I know, Rich, there have been different scenarios, different structures of a trade that have been discussed. That's another part of this here. There's different ways that this can go and conditions and everything else. If we get beyond the draft, then the Jets will be in a place where, okay, Aaron can take all of his receivers and go work out in California. That's fine. We'll have basically 9-on-7 in OTAs here. And the Packers will go, okay, well, we'll continue dragging this out, see you around the start of training camp. I mean, that's where we go into this whole other phase where there's not a lot of precedent for any of this happening. That's why, again, it makes the most sense for this to get done before the draft. But the hang-up right now, Rich, is just they're not quite on the same page with the draft compensation, and they've not yet had that pressure point where anybody necessarily feels the highest level of urgency to get the deal done now.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.